Hello there, and welcome to the EDC Empire. Today we are going to be taking a look at the BlackFOX Knives Bean Gen2, designed by Serge Panchenko and OEM'd by BlackFOX, which is I hadn't heard of until learning about this model. So a little bit of backstory: the Bean Gen2 is a production version of the Bean Gen2, which you can also find custom and midtech variants of from Serge Knives. Again, owned and designed by Serge Panchenko. And BlackFOX, BlackFOX Knives is a sub-brand, or their quote-unquote professional line from Fox Knives, which is kind of a really weird way of categorizing it. If you go on Fox Knives' website, they have a little blurb about BlackFOX, and it's weird. It seems like they're trying to make it like a kind of outdoorsy slash first responder slash military thing, but then they've also got stuff like this, which isn't that. So I'm not really sure I completely understand it. Just know this is produced by BlackFOX, a sub-brand of Fox Knives, and it is produced in China. So it's not made in Italy, as many Fox Knives are. The Bean is a Detent folder, just as the normal mid-tech and custom beans are, and can only be deployed with the thumb hole. There are no flipper tab versions, as is kind of known for the Bean. It's how I always kind of knew the Bean, was there's like a flipper tab kind of thing, and I was kind of hoping that they'd have variants like that, but there is none. It is running on bearings, and I have two of them here. They're pretty smooth. I mean, they're detent folders, so they're not really flickable. And there isn't really a good angle for them. You can kind of do it there, but like it's not perfect. But you can flick them once they wear in. I've noticed that the satin one out of the box especially was a bit better. But also just this variant right here with the steel front scales is also just a bit stiffer overall, and actually some ways I like it more, but we'll get into that a little bit longer or later on. The blade material is 440C, so okay, it's not fantastic, but it's okay. You have a blade, or a sheepsfoot blade that is flat ground on both sides, coming down to a pretty thick tip and pretty thick edge. It takes a while to get actually like ground to be flat, and it is not a thin slicey boy, which is kind of interesting for this type of knife. The handle materials, you're going to have a steel kind of back scale slash liner with that detent bar right here, and then we have wood or G10 liners, or just straight steel with a steel, or I guess wood or G10 scales with a steel liner there. So pretty standard kind of construction, nothing really that interesting going on. What is more interesting is the size. We have an overall length of 5.26 inches when open, and when folded, 3.05 inches. An overall depth of, when folded, of 0.77 inches, which means that it takes up basically no space in the pocket. It is very, very small if you can't tell. And then a width of about 0.4 inches. You can see right there. It is still a pretty thick boy, and a lot of that is coming from your blade stock there. Getting into some comparisons. We have the PM2 and the Para 3, and what we can see here is it is very, very small. Smaller than both, in fact. Then we have the Delica 4 and Benchmade Bugout, again, smaller than both, to no one's surprise. And then taking a look at our two budget offerings, we have our Studio Elementor button look and the QSP Penguin right there. The blade length on the Bean Gen 2 is 2.21 inches with an edge length of 1.86. So very legal if you're in the EU or just somewhere that doesn't like blades. This has a pretty good chance of being legal in that case, so that is something kind of nice to consider. And then we have a blade stock of 0.125. So it's average, but for such a small blade, especially a blade that takes a while to actually start tapering, it's a little bit disappointing, honestly. I would have liked to see a thinner blade stock overall and just a thinner knife. It would have been a little bit more pocketable. To me, this is like a coin pocket slash pocket watch pocket carry. And with that, it's kind of nice to be a little bit thinner. And then finally, we have a weight of, on the steel variant right here, which is going to be the heaviest, of 2.32 ounces. And then the wood variant is right at 2 ounces. And I assume the G10 is going to be right around the wood, maybe more, maybe less. I would assume pretty much the same, though. So overall, they're pretty interesting. I like them in some ways, and I was hoping I would like them more. I'm going to be honest. For most people, I don't really see the need. Unless you live in the EU and you really want a Serge Panchenko design, and you don't want a midtech, you don't want to spend the money, sure, these are perfectly fine. But I don't know. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan. The satin variant is a bit sharper on the blade. It just has some kind of edges that I feel like could be knocked down a little bit. The hole just doesn't feel quite right. I do actually prefer this steel variant right here. Strangely, I've carried it a little bit less, but I like it a lot more. It's also just a little bit stiffer in the detent, and just it feels like the tolerances on it are just that tad bit better. So I do prefer the steel variant. I also think I happen to think it looks a little bit nicer. It reminds me more of a classic Serge design style for firstly, and also it just, I find it to be a more appealing aesthetic. But beyond that, I really wish that these beans had the flipper tab. I kind of already mentioned this, and I think that's one thing that's really holding these back. I've never tried the midtech or the custom, so full disclosure in that case, but I think from what I've seen, I've watched a lot of videos about them, and I've kind of always wanted one, but that flipper tab does make it kind of a little desk fidget toy. I mean, these can be fidgeted with, but I mean, I would honestly rather just play with like a pair of 3 and get a bit more out of it, honestly. There's no like satisfying flick really, because of how you get to the hole, which is fine. Like, I can enjoy a nice rollout, but like, I don't know. It's just, it doesn't do anything for me. And these aren't exactly cheap. Like, if they were a little bit cheaper, I could maybe wrap my head around it, but they're starting at $45, which, with, again, if they had a better steel, maybe I could also wrap my head around it. They seem a little high for the blade material that you're getting and just kind of the whole package. They're well made. I actually don't hate BlackFOX in general. They've got nice like build quality. They feel good. I mean, they look nice. I don't hate the bean design, but it's just the blade's a little thick. I mean, for a little package opener, it's actually pretty fantastic. And if that's what you want, and you want something like this, and maybe you can't have a locking knife, or you don't want to scare anyone, but you still want that one-hand ability of like a more modern knife, this actually is a pretty good option. With 440C and this size, it isn't great. Functionally, the clip works well. Not really gonna be bearing down on it per se, but it's a perfectly good kind of pinch grip, draw cuts. It all works. I mean, it's a pretty basic cylindrical shape when open. I mean, all that's fine. They look pretty good. Like I mentioned, they're actually machined and made pretty well. I really like the steel one because I think it brings out the machining even better. The wood ones, I don't know. The liners don't match up perfectly, but that's also kind of by design from what I can tell to a certain extent. Like the wood kind of overhangs it, which is a little weird to me. Yeah, I think I don't like the wood as much. I like the steel one. It's $5 or like $3 more. So that's something to consider. But I don't know. I'm just not sold on it. If I were asked, okay, if you're looking for just an everyday carry option that's not super scary, I think there are other better detent locks, or even just getting a slip joint. Honestly, like getting a case, I think I could find a little bit more value in terms of other locking or non-locking models. However, if you really want this size, you really want the Serge Panchenko kind of design, and you can't have something locking, then this is a good option. However, if you only want two of those, you want this size and you want something non-locking, or you want a Serge Panchenko, and you, I don't know, I don't know. I'm not convinced on it. I wish I was. I really like the idea of it. If they released a flipper tab variant, I think I'd be more sold. I just think there isn't quite enough being offered there in terms of, I guess, fidgetness. Because use-wise, it isn't great. I mean, it's a little bit too thick to really be able to cut through packages easily, and it's a little, and it's not very fun to fidget with. It's not that great to carry because it's just a tad too thick, in my opinion. So it's just, functionally or play-wise, it has some issues, and it doesn't feel like it's just quite there. However, if the whole package appeals to you, it's what it looks like. It's perfectly well made, and it does what it intends to do well. I just don't think what it intends to do is for a majority of people. I guess that makes sense. If you have one of these, comment down below what you think about it. I'm torn about it. I like the idea of it, but I think it's missing a couple things. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching.